Coming up, we continue exploring World Showcase and travel to the land of the rising sun, Japan. This is Beyond the Kingdoms for Sunday, August 13th, 2017. Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Beyond the Kingdoms. I am your host David and I am joined by my sister Vanessa.
Hi everyone.
And we've got another great episode in our Exploring World Showcase series. I love doing these. These are so much fun. They're a lot of work, but they're a lot of fun. But before we get into this week's episode, I'd like to invite you to our website at beyondthekingdoms.com. There you will find news articles, reviews, and more. You'll also notice there's a little section where you can fill out a quick survey. So for those of you who want to express your opinions, here's your chance. We want to know what you guys want to see in terms of future episodes covering food and wine, Christmas party, Halloween party, the works. So if you don't mind, it takes like 2 minutes, very short. Go fill that out. I'll also put a link to that survey in the description below. And finally, if you want to keep the Disney conversation going with us in between episodes, you can follow us on social media. You can like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. There will be links to all of those channels in the description below. Now, before we get into the episode, Vanessa's got some survey results from a survey we did a few weeks ago when we did the China episode. So Vanessa, I'm going to send it to you.
So I have the results of your favorite film in World Showcase. And in fourth place was Reflections of China.
Which makes me believe this is why Disney's updating it.
Yeah. In third place was The Retired Spirit of Norway. In second place, Oh Canada. And by a long shot, in first place was Impressions de France, which is also my favorite film in World Showcase. And I understand why.
Yeah, it's the best.
Beautiful.
It's the best. So thank you for those who participated. You know, we always put these out on our YouTube channel, on Facebook and Twitter. So this was the results of combining all of those different places where this was put out. So yes, thank you. So now let's get into our episode all about exploring the Japan Pavilion at Epcot. Like always, I've got 5 fast facts for you about Japan. Japan opened on Epcot's opening day on October 1st, 1982. What's really interesting here is that Japan was originally going to feature an original attraction, and there were 3 different ride concepts tossed around for an attraction here, and we will discuss those further later in the episode. This pavilion packs a lot, more than you realize. Yeah. There are 4 dining options here. There are 2 table service, a quick service restaurant, and 2 food and beverage stands. I'm sorry, that is 5 dining options.
It's a lot. When I was doing the research, I was like, oh my gosh, this is never ending.
Yeah. Now, there's only one form of entertainment here at Japan. That's the drum show called Matsuritsa, and that takes place outside the pagoda. And finally, the Mitsukoshi store, which is the mega store in the Japan Pavilion, is actually sponsored by the real Mitsukoshi department store in Japan, and it still exists today, and it's one of the few stores, I think, in Epcot that is sponsored by a real counterpart in the country.
Yeah, it might be the only one. I don't know about some of maybe the fragrance stores like in Japan, in France, like the Givenchy store.
Yeah, it's a great store. We'll talk about that more. So first, like always, we want to talk a little bit about the history of Japan and a little bit of the architecture that can be seen here in the pavilion at Epcot. I think probably one of the most recognizable structures in all of World Showcase Lagoon is this giant torii gate at the front of Japan. This is a very, close, almost exact replica of a real gate that is near Hiroshima. It's near a shrine. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly. It's called the Itsukushima Shrine. And this is one of Japan's most recognizable tourist attractions, one of their most recognizable symbols. Japan does this interesting thing where every so many years, they have like the 3 official views of Japan, like 3 distinct places that, completely embody Japanese culture, architecture, and ambiance. And this is one of the 3 current ones. Now, the shrine that this is adjacent to in Japan is a Shinto shrine, and the complex, it's quite old. I think it was originally built in the 6th century, but it was destroyed and has been rebuilt several times. So if you go to visit it now, the one you will see was actually built in the mid-16th century, so a full 1,000 years after the original one, believe it or not. Now, what's really interesting is that the shrine is built along the bay so that portions of it look like they're just floating over water, as well as this torii gate as well. It looks like it's just floating, and it's very serene and peaceful. Now, the gate itself, the real one in Japan, the version you will see now was built in 1875. And what's really cool is that when the tide comes in and out, the whole experience changes, because when the tide's out, you can actually walk along the bed of the bay and walk underneath the gate. And when the tide's in, obviously the water comes in and you can't walk out there. And this one in Epcot is a beautiful replica. They've even got all the nice little details at the base where you see like the coral kind of that's eroded onto the gate itself. It's stunning. It's one of those picture spots as well, one of the official picture spots.
Official Kodak spot.
Now, these torii gates are really important in Japanese culture. I visited a similar shrine in Kyoto, which has the largest amount of these gates. It's called the Fushimi Shrine, I think. And it was like a pathway of I don't know how many thousands of gates. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. So, and I have a little replica, like take home souvenir version that I got in Japan, and it's really pretty. Now, moving away from architecture, we're going to jump right into shopping because let's face it, this is the best pavilion to shop at in Epcot.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of history here. The Mitsukoshi store, like I said earlier, is sponsored by the real Mitsukoshi store in Japan. The company itself has 5 direct department stores in Japan. All of them are in Tokyo. And then they have 10 more sister department stores throughout Japan. And they even have international ones. We found out there's one in Rome. Believe it or not. I thought that was kind of random, but hey. And there's an interesting story behind this store. There are plaques in the store in Epcot that kind of tells this story, but it's the same story that you can find on their website. So if you want to learn more. But basically, the company was founded in 1673, and the original owners basically sold kimonos door to door, like traveling salesmen. And then one day they kind of realized, hey, this is going to be a lot more financially beneficial for us to just build one store and have everyone come to us. And so they built their first store shortly after that, also I think close to 1673. And it was the first kind of official, big store to sell Japanese kimono in Japan at the time. And they just sold clothing back then in the beginning. And then by 1904, they had expanded the company further and they decided to completely renovate the store and modernize it into a Western style department store. And it's considered the first Western style department store in Japan to this day. And now they sell all sorts of products, from like high-end jewelry to clothing to little knickknacks to, Japanese anime things. I mean, the works, the complete works. So this Epcot version is a very authentic shopping experience in Japan. I can tell you myself from going there, there's a big department store culture. Some of the best restaurants in Japan are in department stores. There's department stores within train stations, and they're so impressive and just stunning. So this is great. I love this place. Now, before I carry on too much, Vanessa's going to give us some shopping highlights of products you can find in the store here at Epcot.
So I'm going to walk you through the store geographically as if you were entering from the front.
Yeah, most logical.
Yeah. The first thing you're going to run right into is Hello Kitty, Pokemon, and Japanimation merchandise. And it is very overwhelming. There's so much of it.
Yeah, this section was very recently renovated within the last few months. There's now like a display of little like anime dolls and stuff with like a Mount Fuji cartoon guy, and it's very overwhelming.
And right behind that, as you continue to walk forward, there's this new area on the right-hand side in the corner, and it's an oyster station. And David, you experienced this more than I did, so let us know what that's about.
Yeah, this has been at the Epcot store since the beginning, but it used to be on the left-hand side. This is like a newly developed kind of corner for this, and there's a lot more space for people to see what's going on. It's kind of a mini show. You get to pick an oyster in a tank, and inside the oyster will be a pearl. So you're basically paying for a pearl, but they make a whole show out of it because the person there will open it up. They do this whole ceremony. There's someone playing on the drums. There's also now a camera that records it. So there's a screen behind the person working there so that everyone can see what's going on as she's opening the pearl. And then inside will traditionally be just a white Japanese pearl, but sometimes you could get a black one. Sometimes you can get 2. Sometimes there's like variant colors. So it's all about the surprise of
That's cool.
What will you get? And they clean it off and they measure it because like the size of it will affect its worth. And
Yeah.
just the basic experience costs $16.
That's not
which
bad.
is not bad at all. And then you can just take the pearl, but you can also buy jewelry, like set it in a piece of jewelry, and then that will start to add on different costs. But it's a really fun thing that kids really enjoy to do.
I'm going to try that next time we go. Well, as we move forward, you walk into this other space, and there you're going to find t-shirts and figurines and paper fans. Then you continue to walk forward, and you're going to encounter this room that kind of splits off into two. On the right-hand corner, you're going to have a kimono section, which ironically, knowing, the story of the department store, how this is like its own little designated area.
Yeah, how it's special.
I encountered this amazing woman who was a salesperson, and she really was very helpful in helping me find sizes and the different materials because I was buying one for my daughter and my best friend. So the kids' sizes are about $40 and the adults are around $70 to $80. There's different material. I got her cotton, but there was also like a polyester or a silk. And what I really loved was that she explained to me how you are to wear them, how traditionally you're supposed to wear them with the left side over the right. A lot of Westerners get this wrong. The only reason why you would do it the other way around would be if you were dressing the dead for a burial. So it's something that's like a big no-no. Don't get it wrong. And they even put instructions inside the kimono once I purchased it.
Well, and it's something that's very fascinating about the Japanese culture. They hold on to their traditions very strongly, and they make sure to, tourists or Westerners to explain it like with pride and specificity, but without being abrasive. They're very happy to explain it to somebody, but they want to make sure that they get it right. Yeah.
And she was just so helpful and so kind and so good with my little one who was trying to pull kimonos off of hangers. In the adjacent room, you're going to find an array of merchandise from samurai swords to bonsai trees, incense, and calligraphy crafts. So that's really cool. Then you're going to enter yet another room. This is like a very winding kind of situation. Here you're going to find more figurines, samurai masks, headbands.
Yeah.
And this really interesting doll called a Daruma doll. And they had these plaques next to the doll explaining its history and significance to their culture. So it's basically a good luck charm that historically is given or purchased on New Year's.
So you give it as a gift to somebody,
or you can
right?
buy it for yourself.
Oh, right. Okay.
It was modeled after the founder of the Zen sect of Buddhism. And it's only supposed to give you good luck for one whole year. And usually on the day after New Year's, you return to the temple where you purchased it, and they do this traditional burning ceremony. There's also an annual festival held in the city of Takasaki. This city is proclaimed as the birthplace of these dolls, and it produces 80% of Japan's Daruma dolls. So that's something really interesting that I found like so fascinating just based off of this one doll. And it's rooted in so much history.
And New Year's is a very important holiday from like a religious standpoint and like more than just celebrating the year like us Americans do, just getting drunk and all that. It's a very big sacred holiday to them. And I think during holidays around the world at Epcot, this is the holiday that they focus on. And that's what the storyteller talks about.
Well, and then there's one last room, and that's everybody's favorite room because it has all the yummy treats and drinks. And this is where you can find traditional Japanese candies, snacks. You can find traditional teas and tea sets. And in the back corner, you can also find a little hidden gem. I don't know if a lot of people know about it, which is this small sake bar. And you can get a sake flight. You can buy bottles. Obviously, you don't take them with you. They'll send them to wherever you are or the front of the park. But this is a nice little hidden gem.
I think that was the first place I tried sake ever in my life.
Interesting.
Probably.
Well, the Pavilion is the first place where I tried sushi.
Oh, really?
So there you are.
That's interesting. I just want to say this back section with the candy is so dead on accurate in terms of the products they sell, because I distinctly remember when I traveled to Japan, there was an array of candy, some of which I had no idea what it was, but I distinctly remember Kit Kat bars everywhere and of every type of flavor you could imagine. There was like a strawberry one. There was a cookies and cream Kit Kat. There was a green tea Kit Kat. And the last time we went, when we were doing research for this episode, I went looking for them, and I did find at least the green tea flavored Kit Kat and so many other treats that I remember from Japan. And
There's
it's just like, I could lose a whole paycheck.
There's
in
this
that
one
store.
candy that I've been buying from this pavilion since I was a little girl. There are these long sticked lollipops, and at the top, there are these little triangles, and they're different flavors. And when you hold it, it looks like a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah.
But the last couple of times, I can't find it. And a fan actually was like, it's still there. And I went and I was looking. So if anybody knows exactly where it is in the store, please leave it in the comments below because I need to find this candy.
They could change it too. Like the store probably changes its merchandise around so often.
I need it.
So yeah, if you don't do anything except one thing in Japan Pavilion, it's go shopping.
Yeah, go to this store.
It's like I said, it's the best store. Can't talk enough about it. Okay, so right after you exit the store, you're going to see a little gallery which was recently updated, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, and it talks about the kawaii culture. I hope I said that right. I'm very sorry. It's the culture of cute, as they say. Now, the word itself comes from a phrase that means blushing of the face. And the term was first used in a piece of Japanese literature called The Tale of Genji, which was first published in the 11th century. So even though today it's associated with things like Hello Kitty and Pikachu, this cute culture concept goes back many centuries. It's just changed and developed over the years. And like the kind of modern day use of it with this obsession with these characters and the Harajuku girls who dress up in these crazy costumes and all that kind of started in the 70s. And that's when you started to see the development of products like Hello Kitty and all that. And all these products are on display in this gallery. What's really cool is they have a little display that looks like a little Japanese apartment filled with this kind of merchandising and what it looks like. And it's just a lot of fun, a nice little slice of life in modern Japan. And this is also adjacent to where the KidCot station is. The KidCot station has got some nice, some nice banners and stuff like that. I don't know if you can purchase them, but there's just nice little products in that little corner.
It's a nice little corner where you can stay away from the sun too, to let your kids just chill.
Yeah. And it's great to stop here at this exact point because this originally would have been the entrance to one of the 3 attractions that was tossed around. So instead of this, the probably would have kept the store, but where the candy section is, that would have been like the queue for an attraction. And there were, like
you can tell because the room is different. When you look into the ceiling, the room looks a little different than the rest of the store.
Yeah. And these concepts got very far along. There was concept art developed. And one of them, the first concept that was tossed around, was a Mount Fuji roller coaster. So believe it or not, next time you go to World Showcase, look across the lagoon and pretend you see a little Mount Fuji behind the pagoda and the little castle in Japan. And that would have changed the scenery completely. I think it would have dwarfed everything else, to be honest with you. And this was kind of going to be a take, a Japanese version of the Matterhorn attraction at Disneyland. It was going to be a roller coaster that took you in and outside the mountain. They probably would have designed it so you don't really see the cars, outside the mountain from the front because it wouldn't look authentic to the real thing.
Yeah.
And I guess in some ways, I think this kind of inspired Imagineers to build Expedition Everest, this concept of a roller coaster in a mountain in Asia. So they kind of still got it out there, but they did not. And one of the reasons for that was because they couldn't lock in a sponsor for the attraction. Now, I think there was discussions about approaching Fujifilm, obviously to naturally tie in with Mount Fuji, but that would have sparked controversy because at this point, Kodak was already a sponsor. I think they had already developed a sponsorship at Disneyland, but Kodak had already signed on to sponsor the Imagination Pavilion, and that was pretty far along at this point. So because of, bad competition and sparking controversy between corporate masters, they decided to just kind of abandon the whole thing. And then the second concept tossed around, and I sincerely wish they would have done this, would have been like a kind of take on Circle Vision, but in a whole nother way, and it would have been a bullet train experience. So it still would have been a stationary theater, but instead of standing in a big room like Circle Vision, you would stand inside a room that looked like the bullet trains in Japan, and the windows would be wrapped by a screen from top to ceiling. And so the theater might have moved a little bit to give you the feeling of motion, and it would have been as if taking you on a journey through the country of Japan and just kind of taking you through all the main sites. I so wish they would have done this. I think it still would do really well even today, if like this, considering screens are a big thing.
And it's probably quite simple to make. or put together.
Well, I think it's also kind of similar. Universal developed that whole 360 around the car ride concept when they first did Kong over Universal Hollywood, and they kind of adapted it for Fast and the Furious and all that. So the technology's there. They were just really well ahead of their time.
Yeah.
But I think because of costs, again, that got scratched. And then the third concept, which came very, very close to happening, was this animatronic show called Meet the World.
Yeah, and it would have been a variation of the Carousel of Progress, where guests would sit in a theater and move through different show scenes. But this one's a little bit different. The structure and the layout would have been reversed. So guests would sit in a rotating theater at the center and spin around stationary stages on the outer edges of the building. Now, the show was developed for Tokyo Disneyland, where it opened on the park's opening day in Tomorrowland. So we would have just had a copy. And I've watched a video of it, and it's very similar to the American Adventure in the America Pavilion, where it's this marrying of screens and animatronics. And it basically tells the history of Japan from inception, like from how it developed, you know, in
as a
volcano.
Yeah.
I tried my best to understand what was going on, but it was all in Japanese.
And I think part of the reason why they did the reverse is so they can get that kind of wrap around screen sort of shape going on. And one of the reasons, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons why I think this didn't happen at Epcot at least was because there was, if you watch the original show on YouTube, they kind of completely glaze over World War II and everything that happened. And that's a very, you know, controversial event between Americans and the Japanese.
Yeah.
And I think they Imagineers thought if this is opened in America, any sort of veterans that come to Disney, which, hey, there's a lot, they'd probably get a little upset and offended that you kind of glaze over this monumentous historical event. And I'm actually surprised that they glaze over it, because like American Adventure talks about negative points in our history, but I guess the Japanese didn't want to do that, and hey, that's fine. It's their choice.
Everybody reflects on what they want to reflect on, you know, the way that they can handle it.
So this got really far. I think they built the show building itself. I think they built like the turntable. They started building it and then pulled out. So behind the candy section of the store, there is still more of the building. That's just an empty shell right now, and it's such a shame. Now, I think if Disney continues this whole redevelopment of World Showcase, I would not be surprised if some sort of attraction happens in Japan, because the infrastructure's there. Just have no idea what. We'll see.
Yeah. I would love that roller coaster.
So would I, yeah. Now, instead, we do have at the top of this building, like on top of where the gallery and the shop sits on this end, a replica of the Himeji Castle. I hope I said that correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. Now, the real castle is located about an hour and a half west of Osaka, and the castle itself dates back to 1333, and it is considered one of Japan's most well-preserved castles. And it's, you know, what they think as like the perfect example of traditional Japanese architecture. Now, the building was originally built as a fort at the top of a hill, so, you know, the guards and soldiers can look out from above. And later on, it was torn down and completely rebuilt as a castle for one of their emperors. And then the castle was abandoned during the Meiji period. This is between 1868 and 1912. This is because this is the period after Japan comes out of the Edo period, which is that's a point in Japanese history where they isolated themselves from the rest of the world. They believed in this isolation approach to foreign policy, and they really held on to traditional customs and cultures. And so this period after that is when they're transitioning back into kind of trading and communicating with the rest of the world. So this is when they abandoned like the castles and the whole system of government that was happening there. There was a big uprising at this point. And the replica is dead near exact when you see pictures of the real thing versus Epcot. It's really stunning. Now, Vanessa's going to talk to us a little bit more when we look into the courtyard. So if we take a step back from looking at that castle and look at the Japan Pavilion as a whole, you get a whole nother side of Japan.
Yeah. So mainly the structures are influenced by buildings in Kyoto. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kyoto is like the next big city in Japan.
I think after Tokyo, it's Osaka and then Kyoto. Kyoto's just
very traditional.
Yeah, it's if you as a tourist, if you want to see traditional Japanese culture, that's the city to go to because it is so beautifully well preserved.
Now, the main building that houses the store is modeled after the Hall of Ceremonies, which is found at the Imperial Palace in Kyoto. The pagodas, though, they're not modeled after a specific pagoda in Japan. But there's elements of traditional Japanese pagoda which are often linked to Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
What makes this one distinctly Japanese and Buddhist is that its muted colors, which are mainly gray, black, and white and blue, are used.
Yeah, because I don't think we talked about it in the China episode. A big difference are color schemes. You'll notice in China everything's red and gold and quite bold and vibrant, whereas in Japan everything's quite muted and subdued and serene.
And it carries out throughout the rest of the buildings in the pavilion.
Yeah.
Another aspect which is distinctly Buddhist are the 5 tiers which represent the 5 elements of Japanese Buddhism, which is earth, water, fire, wind, and void, or what we would call sky and heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And that you'll see in the pagoda.
Yeah, and at the base of the pagoda, you'll see Japan's only form of entertainment, and this is Matsuritsa. This is a musical group that performs traditional taiko drumming. I think I said that correctly. And these drums kind of date back to warfare. These were used originally to motivate troops when they were in war, and then later was adapted and used in Japanese theater. And now there's these drumming festivals that are carried out throughout the country. So this is very much like a mini version of going to one of these festivals. And the show takes place 7 times a day. It's one of my favorites because you can hear them throughout the whole pavilion. So it just really adds this ambiance to the whole experience of the whole exterior of Japan. And yeah, so 7 times a day. Showtimes are usually 12:20, 1:05, 2 p.m., 3:20, 4:10, 5:15, and 6:15. I think that's the most number of performances when it comes to the little shows around World Showcase.
Yeah, and I like it too because it's very grand, where sometimes the other shows like in Italy and France, they're more based on comedy, you know, and street performance, where this has a sense of grandeur that I really
it's only like
really
3
enjoy.
performers, but you're right, it does have this sense of just big grandeur to it. Yeah. And then adjacent to the pagoda, there's a nice little Japanese garden with a little pond with koi fish and all that. And up on a hill is Katsura Grill. This is the first of the many forms of dining available at Japan. I recently came here for the first time. I've been trying to get here a lot and I always seem to miss it. But this is a quick service restaurant that is usually open from 11:30 a.m. till park close, and it serves lunch and dinner, and it's the same menu all day long. This place was recently renovated and the menu changed a little bit. So there are little samplings of sushi, nothing crazy exotic, some noodle dishes. The main focus are their teriyaki dishes though. The sushi on average is about $10. The rest of the entrees are about $12. There's also a kids menu here, again, really focusing on the teriyaki options. And they have a few desserts, alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages as well. I will say as a highlight, I specifically went here because I love katsu curry, which is a Japanese curry where it's breaded chicken with like the panko crumbs and the curry sauce and rice, and it's so yummy. And I noticed they had it on the menu, so I went kind of like, I hope they do this right. And actually, it was delicious. It was
awesome.
Just how I wanted it to be, and it was really yummy.
That's always good to hear when they hit it on the head.
Yeah.
know?
And what's really nice about this place as well is there's loads of seating. So there's seating inside, obviously, and you get, a nice panoramic view of the Japan Pavilion up there because there's lots of nice big windows. But the outdoor seating is wonderful because it's a nice serene garden with lanterns above, and at night it can be really peaceful. Certain pockets, if you kind of get the right seat, you can sort of see the lagoon and possibly see some fireworks. But I think this is the most serene place to grab a bite to eat in World Showcase. It's so secluded.
It is.
It's
It's
wonderful.
its own little thing right above that little portion of the hill.
And the outside's supposed to look like a tea house. So that's the whole vibe that's going on here.
Well, next, I'm going to take you to some of my favorite spots, which is the Kabuki Cafe and the Garden House. These are the 2 stands found in this pavilion. Both are open from 11:30 a.m. to park closing. Now, when walking from the America Pavilion, the Kabuki Cafe will be the first thing you will hit on the path to Japan. It's on the left-hand side. The Garden House is located in the center of the pavilion at the base of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at both of these stands, you can find soft drinks and iced green tea. You can also find Japanese beer. They feature Kirin, Asahi, and Sapporo. The prices of beers range from $6 to $8, roughly.
And they do frozen versions.
They do a frozen version of Kirin. The main differences, though, of these stands is that the Garden House is really known for their plum wine and sake options.
Drinks.
And you can have there's like a wide variety from $6.50 to $11 in price. And this is where you can also get another sake flight. And it's only at $13. You can get to sample 3 different types of sake, which I think is really cool.
I think people don't know about this because it doesn't come up on the map at all.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all.
It's a little
it's very
secret.
deceiving. Now, at Kabuki Cafe, you will find what I consider to be the best snack in Walt Disney World. Now, this is very skewed because I like shaved ice, which is what this is. They have a variety of flavors, and they're all priced at $4, which I think is a great price.
Yeah.
It's a huge shaved ice, like massive. You can also add a sweet milk topping for only $1 more. And they also have something that I haven't tried yet, but this is definitely on my to-do next time I go, is shaved ice with a sake mist. And that's priced at $9.
That's not bad.
The stand has minimal food like edamame and like 2 or 3 sushi rolls, and it's usually like a California roll,
Yeah,
maybe
nothing
like a
crazy.
spicy roll.
Yeah.
But the other stand doesn't have food. So if
Right.
you wanted to get a quick light bite, this is where you would go.
Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to the table service restaurants. If you see that, if we're going back to that big building on the right where the store's on the ground floor. On the second floor, up the big staircase, are 2 restaurants that are adjacent to each other, Tokyo Dining and Teppan Edo. I'm going to first talk to you about Tokyo Dining, which is on the front half of this building. Now, this restaurant serves lunch and dinner. Lunch is normally served between noon and 3:45, and dinner is between 4 and whatever park closing is. In terms of a view, if you want a good view for fireworks, this is one of the better choices. I'm not going to say the best, probably like third, because you're up on that hill and you have the nice big window, so you get a nice good view of the lagoon out there. And I do think that they may pump the music in, I'm not sure. But you can also just go out into the balcony. So if you're not eating there, just go up to the balcony up there and watch the fireworks. Now, in terms of food, this place is actually deceiving. The menu is humongous. And actually, I think what's on Disney's website is not the full thing. And they do change it from time to time. In terms of appetizers, at its core, there's a few things like soups and salad. There's also a spicy tempura calamari, which sounds very yummy. And on average, appetizers are around $8. Now, in terms of food, a highlight here is obviously sushi. Disclaimer. This is actually not the best place for sushi. It's a good place for sushi. I think better than California Grill just because of more options. But if you want really good sushi, the best place to go to is Kimono's at the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin, which is not too far. But still a good place for sushi. They'll have sushi rolls, sashimi rolls, by the pieces, whatever you want. The sashimi plates are usually about $14. The special rolls, when you're talking about like dragon rolls and all that, are usually about $15, which is pretty average sushi price in America.
I think it's like $1 more from your local from my local spot it is.
And it depends what you get. And then when it comes to their main entrees, it's all about combinations of things. There's lots of samplers of different types of cooking. There's a few dishes that are called the yakimono dishes. These are usually all the grilled stuff. And then they'll have the agimono dishes, which is all the fried stuff. Those are usually around $28, $29, which is about the average for Disney table service. They also have a few rice and noodle dishes. And the kids' meal, same lunch and dinner. They have things like, a chicken teriyaki burger or something like that, and it's $13. So it's a good place to eat. I think I'm slightly skewed because I've had Japanese food, and I feel like there could be so much more in here, but it's still a good option.
So I'm going to wrap us up with dining, talking about one of my favorite restaurants in World Showcase, which is Teppan Edo. This is a hibachi restaurant, which means that the chef cooks your food in front of you and puts on a show. If you've never had this dining experience, it's very unique because of the party size that has to be sitting at the table. So if, let's say, you're a party of 4 or 6, you most likely will have other guests joining you from another family or another group that's dining. The menu for lunch and dinner is the same. There are a small amount of appetizers and sushi entrees, but the real highlight here are the entrees that will be cooked in front of you. The average entree is about $33, and the most popular being the combination. So it's like a combination of steak and chicken, or a combination of chicken and shrimp, or a combination of steak and shrimp.
Yeah.
That one's my favorite. You really get a good bang for your buck here, because when you get these combinations, you're going to get a soup and a salad at the beginning of your meal.
Yeah.
And you also get a scoop of ice cream at the end.
Yeah.
And of course, you get this show. And the last time I went, it was my anniversary, and he did this whole 13-year anniversary thing with a guy holding a Mickey balloon made out of onions, and I was blown out of the water. I do have to note in doing research that hibachi is not necessarily a traditional Japanese way of eating.
Yeah.
They created this for Americans.
Yeah, it was created by Japanese people.
It was created by Japanese people, but for Westerners.
Yeah.
So when you go to Japan, you won't necessarily be seeing benihana
No.
or those styles of restaurants there.
No, because when I went, I didn't go looking for it, but after the fact, I thought, they don't have that anywhere. And that's how I discovered that. The food is great at this restaurant.
Amazing.
And in this pavilion. I just sincerely wish there was more options. I know Disney watered it down because, let's face it, Americans are not as familiar with all the crazy Japanese style of food. But Japan is like the France of Asia.
And I feel
when it
like
comes to
Americans
food.
are more exposed than maybe they were in the 80s when they first created this pavilion.
Right.
So I think, hey, we've evolved as a culture and we're all about Japanese culture and Japanese food, especially if you come from places like California.
Yeah. Where there's
Let's
a strong
push it a little
Asian-
bit, You
I
have
think
all
so.
these options. At least make one of the dining options a little more adventurous.
I wish they would have done one of the quick services to have okonomiyaki. I think that's how you say it. It's like a Japanese potato pancake with all sorts of things in
had
it.
that.
It's so yummy.
yummy.
And Westerners would totally like it because there's nothing obscure about the flavors. It's just kind of how it's constructed. I wish that was in the quick service. That's like my one. I wish it was there. To wrap this up, I think we've praised the Japan Pavilion quite a lot in this episode, but I will say I think Japan and Epcot is probably the most authentic in terms of how it feels when you go in there. And part of that is because Japan is immaculately clean. I remember getting off that plane and I thought I was at Disney World because I just didn't believe how clean everything was and how perfectly ordered everything was. You know what I mean? And in some countries in World Showcase, it feels like a Disney version of the real place.
A romanticized version.
France is a Disney version of the real thing.
Italy is.
Italy is. Morocco is. China is.
Mexico is.
Mexico is. This place really feels like the real thing. And part of it is also that, the countries at World Showcase try to balance a little bit of traditional culture with something current as well. And because the Japanese culture have a very strong sense of balance when it comes to upholding their traditions, but still moving quite forward with technology and all that, you really get a sense of that here at Epcot because the store feels quite modern, but the exteriors feel very traditional. And it really feels like the real thing. I've been, so I feel confident saying that. And I love this place, hands down. It's a must stop for me. So that will have to do it for this week's episode of Beyond the Kingdoms. Thank you very much for listening to us barrel through Exploring World Showcase.
We're almost done.
We're almost done. We're getting there. Stay tuned next week because next week things start shifting because we're going to be doing a guide to this year's Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Yes, it's August and I'm talking about Halloween. I'm very sorry. Disney made me do it.
'Tis the season. We're getting into the thick of the season.
Yeah.
So this is when things start getting exciting. Food and wine,
Yeah.
Halloween, all those good stuff.
And we're going to change things up. We're going to give you a guide first next week. And then after that, we'll be giving you little reviews of different aspects of the party. So make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, share this with your friends. And until then, we hope you have a fantastic week. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Sayonara.